Hello students, welcome back. We did some really great work in our last video. We created our world and created a player object that we could control. In this video, we're going to do some pretty great work too, because we're going to give our program sort of the awareness of how the user is playing the game. If we think about it, the game needs to keep track of the state it is in. What is a game state? Well, when we start our game, automatically we can move around the screen. We might not want that. We might want to display like a start menu, right? Some text that describes what the game is about in the game title. And so that might be our start state. And then when the user presses start or enter on the keyboard, we would transition into actually playing the game, our play state. But we can't play the game forever. Eventually, we, the user, are going to lose the game, or maybe beat the game if we're good at it. I don't think I'm good at it. And then we might be in like a game over state where the game is done. And we should be able to transition from these states seamlessly. Start to play, to lose, back to play, back to start. And so we need a way to implement this system. And this is what we're going to do here in this video. So let's head to the computer screen and let's dive right in. So I have lesson 2 starter file open here in vscode.dev. I'm going to minimize my browser here quickly, and we're going to open that file directly. So I'm going to go to my Glowfield folder, lesson number 2, and I'll open up our starter file. So if we look here, our starter file is just our game. It's just the game we left off with in the last video. There's no start screen here, okay? There's no way for me to die. There's no game over screen. It's just me playing the game. Right now, it's like we have no states at all. So we got to work on that. So let's head to the code and let's see what we can come up with here by solving our 8 missions in this lesson on game states and overlay screens. So we had talked about our title screen or a game over screen. Those are what we would refer to as overlays, because our game exists, and then over this game, we're going to draw another screen. Our title screen will sit on top of this. Our game over screen will sit on top of this. And that's why we refer to these as overlays. So let's look at mission number 1. It says we have to add the game state values because, we said, all right, what are some of the states we got to keep track of? We got to keep track of like a start state, a play state, a lose state. Maybe like later on we could add a pause state or a menu, like an inventory state. But for right now, we're just going to look at start, play, and lose. We got to create variables for these, some way we can keep track of them. So let's hit Control F to open up my search bar, and I'm going to search for the mission 1 tag, and I'm going to go down to the next instance of it. Where does this put us? Well, it puts us in the student edit zone. So right here, we're going to define our variable in the student edit zone. Our variable is going to be called game mode, and it's a constant because once we define it for our program, we will never change it. We are going to make it, ooh, look at this, it's curly brackets. That means we're going to make it an object that has properties, much like how our player object had properties, right? An X property and a Y property that we targeted in our last video. So I'm going to set some property names, and then I'm going to give them values. I'm going to set a property called start, and I'm going to use all capital letters here for my conventions. All right, and the value is just going to be a string. So inside of quotations, I'm going to put a string called start. That works for me. And then I'm going to create a property called the play property, and its value will be a string play. And then I'll create a property called lose, and its value will be lose. So now I have this variable, which is an object, so I can like check. I could be like, okay, game mode dot, and I can access its properties. Look, I can access its lose, its play, its start property. So I access its start property. You know what that equals? That is equal to a string called start. And so now I can use those to maybe assign values to variables. I can use them to check for comparisons. I can ask questions using if statements. If the game mode's value is equal to start, then it's time to start the game. All right, so that level, mission number 1 is complete. We defined this game mode variable or game mode object, which is going to be extremely helpful for us. Mission 2 says we got to actually use the starting game mode. So set the current game mode to the title screen. Make the game begin in the correct state. All right, so we said this object we can use to like set a variable's value. It looks like the variable's value that we're going to set is called current game mode. So this variable, which we're defining as a gameplay variable, we're using let here because we are going to be constantly changing this thing's value. As we transition, if we're in the start state, it will be the start part of our game mode variable. And then if we go to play, we'll make it the play property. And if we go to lose, we'll make it the lose property here. So we got to change it. So what do we want to set it to when we first start our game? Well, I guess I want to set it to the game mode object's start property. So let's reference the object that we just created, game mode, dot, and what properties do we have? We have lose, play, and start. So it would be really mean of us is right when the game loaded, we made them lose right off the bat. That would be a bad game. So we're going to have them start. We'll set it to the start mode. And then we're going to use this to, I don't know, maybe trigger showing our start overlay screen somehow. But now we are set with mission number 2. So the infrastructure is in place. We've got an object here that is keeping track of all of the potential game modes that we have. And then we have a variable that is keeping track of the current game mode. And we're getting the current game mode from the object that we created that holds all of our potential game mode options. This is super powerful, and it's really, really nicely done. So let's move to mission number 3. Mission number 3 is in a draw function. It's called draw start overlay, right? So we're in these draw functions. We got to draw information to the screen. We've defined data. Now we're trying to draw our data. Because right now, if I restart my game, there's no start overlay, right? You don't see a start screen at all. It's just our regular old game being played here. So let's see what we're doing in the draw start overlay function. We're calling no stroke, which means give me an invisible marker so you're not going to see the outline of the shape that I am about to draw. And then we load up some paint in our paint bucket with this overlay background color. That looks like it is a transparent black, an RGB alpha string 0, 0, 0. There's black with a 0.65 alpha channel. So that means slightly transparent. And we load that paint up in our paint bucket, and then we draw a rectangle. The rectangle we're going to draw has an upper left-hand corner of 0, 0, and its width is the width of our canvas. Its height is the height of our canvas. So we're going to start right here in the upper left-hand corner. We're going to go all the way to the width, all the way down the height. We're going to draw a rectangle. We're going to fill it with a transparent black, and it's going to have no outline. That's going to be our start overlay. Because it's transparent, we're going to be able to see behind it and still see our gameplay world, which is kind of cool. And that's why it's called an overlay. But we got to put some information in this overlay. So mission 3 says draw the start screen overlay and show the title over the game board. So if you look, we've already got some text in this overlay that's going to be written. It says the light grid is fading, recover lost orbs to restore the light, press enter to illuminate. I like that text. That's what I would refer to as flavor text. It sort of defines the mood of our game. But you know what this is missing? This start screen has some good flavor text, but it's missing like our game title, right? We should probably show the game title, and that's what we're going to do right here. So the first thing that we got to do is recognize that we have paint in our paint bucket, which is this transparent black. I don't want my text to be that color, so I'm going to put a new paint in my paint bucket. I'm going to use the fill function, and I'm going to load up the predefined text color that we had, which is like that white color. Then I'm going to align my text. I'm going to tell how do I want my text to sit. So I'm going to do text align, and we're going to center align this. So center in the horizontal and center in the vertical. So what that's going to do, if we did like a left align, then left align would position it based off of this part of the string. A right align would position it based off of this part of the string, and center aligned is going to position it smack dab in the middle, and that's what we want to do here. So we'll center align it horizontally, and then I'm going to set the text size because I want my title to be a little bit bigger than everything else. So I'm going to say text size, and I'm going to set it to, I don't know, 60. That works for me. All right, and so now let's create the text object that we're going to use here for our title. So we need 3 pieces of information here with the text function. First, the string. So I'll say Glowfield, and then the position. So if we look, we need our X position and our Y position. Our X positions are, for everything else, is width over 2, width over 2, width over 2. that's going to just put it smack dab in the center horizontally. I love that. Let's continue that here. So we're going to do width over 2. Now its vertical position, where do we want to put it? Well, let's look at what we've been doing with our other texts. We're taking the height of our canvas and multiplying by a decimal, the height of our canvas and multiplying by a decimal, the height of our canvas and multiplying by a decimal. I want to mimic that structure. So I'm going to do the height of our canvas times some decimal. Well, if I multiply by 1.0, that is a decimal. What that's going to do, anytime you multiply by 1, you just get this value back. It's going to put our title all the way at the bottom of our screen, the height. Bloop, right there. And if I multiplied it by 0.0, well then that's going to be 0. It's going to put our title bloop, way at the top of our HUD. And multiplying by any decimal between 0 and 1 is going to move it down the screen accordingly. So if you look, we multiplied by 0.44, then 0.55, then 0.66. Those are going to be stacked right on top of each other. So I'm going to put my title like, I don't know, maybe like a third of the way down the screen. So I'm going to take the height and I'm going to multiply it by like a third, or 0.3. Let's multiply by 0.3 here. I think that that should work nicely. All right, let's refresh the page. Is our title screen showing up? No, of course not. It's not showing up yet. There's still more we got to do. So let's head to mission number 4. Mission number 4 isn't going to show us our title screen yet. It actually is putting us in our lose overlay, because not only are we going to draw a start screen when we start the game, but when we lose the game, we have to show a lose screen, a game over screen. And that's going to have flavor text as well. So we have a draw start overlay function. And then we have a draw lose overlay function. Anytime we want to make a new overlay, we just make a new function for it. And so we're doing the exact same thing we did before. We get an invisible marker, we put paint in our paint bucket, and then we draw a rectangle over the entire screen. And then look at, we're putting new paint in our paint bucket. We're our text color, we're center aligning, we're upping our text size, and then we're saying, you have faded. The darkness has consumed you. More flavor text, right? But now we want to add a little bit more text here. It says, show the restart instructions, because really we want our player to play again. So I'm going to make another text object, and I'm going to put a line of text below this line. All right, so below this line. And it's going to say, the string will say, press enter to re-illuminate. All right, that's like the phrase I'll say to play again. The X position will be width divided by 2. And my height, I'm just going to move it down the screen. So height times 0.55. I sort of like that. And then we'll do one more line of text. So we'll say press R for the title screen. And I'll put it at an X position of width over 2, and I'll just move it further down the screen. So height times 0.66. And I'm going to capitalize my T here. All right, so now our lose overlay title screen flavor text, our lose overlay flavor text is set. But again, we're not drawing these at all, so that's a huge problem. The data is set. These functions are set, but it looks like we're never actually calling these functions at all. So if we look in our draw scene, what are we drawing? Well, we're drawing our background, we're drawing our player, and we're drawing our HUD. But I don't see anything about drawing our overlays. And so that is where mission 5 takes us. It says we got to show the correct overlay for the current game state. Display the start or lose screen only when needed. Well, let's first start by let's see, can I just call these functions? So we got this draw start overlay. So draw start overlay. Let's call that function. So to call a function, you write it out, 2 parentheses, and then a semicolon. All right, there we go. So now let's see if my start screen shows up. Hey, there's my start screen. And you can see it's sitting over my game window, right? That we got that nice transparent background. So that looks pretty good. What if we draw our lose overlay? Draw lose overlay as well. Okay, so I guess that works. We look at this. We drew our start overlay, and then over that we drew our lose overlay. So they're like sitting on top of each other. That's not great. We're drawing those overlays every single frame. I don't want to draw the start overlay all the time. I only want to draw the start overlay if we are in. I'm going to jump up here. If we are in the start mode of our game. I only want to draw the lose overlay if we are in the lose mode of our game. So I have to ask some questions here. So let's go back to mission 5. I only want to draw those if certain conditions are true. So we're going to ask a question. I'm going to say if. And the question that I'll ask is, what is the current state of the game? If the current state of the game is the start state, then we will draw the start overlay. So remember, we have a variable that is keeping track of the current state of the game. It was called current game mode. Now, look here. This is super nice. I just start typing out the variable name current, and then I get a list of options. And right here, if I'm highlighting the one I like, I can hit tab, and it will auto-complete it for me. So if current game mode, I want to check to see if it is equal to what my game mode object's start property. 1 equal sign assigns a value. 2 equal signs checks for loose equality. 3 checks for strict equality. So we'll do 3 equal signs here. And we're going to use our game mode object that we created. And we will say, hey, is the current game mode equal to the start property? If it is, what do we want to do? We're going to draw our start overlay. We will call our draw start overlay function. So that's going to work really great. But we want a follow-up question, because if this answer here to this question is no, it's not true, we're then going to ask a follow-up question. We'll say, okay, it wasn't equal to start. Is it equal to lose? Because if it's equal to lose, then we'll draw our lose overlay. So we could ask another independent question, right? I could have another if statement here. But if these are two separate questions, we want to ask a follow-up question. So if you want to ask a follow-up question, you can use else if. So if this happens, do this. If this condition is not true, if the answer to this question was no, then we'll ask this follow-up question using else if. And so we'll ask our follow-up question. We'll say, what about, is the current game mode variable equal to game mode dot lose? Is it equal to our lose property? And if it is, then what do we want to do? We're going to draw our lose overlay. And I'm just going to format that a little bit nicer. All right, so now we have questions and follow-up questions with if and else if. So let's run this right now. What is the current state of our variable current game mode? Well, I believe we had set it way up here to .start. So if we run our game, our start overlay shows up. So that works pretty good. If I set it to lose, now it's our lose overlay that should show. And it does. Perfect. It looks like I'm not rendering all of my lines of text. Let's go. I got to go to mission number 4. I got to go check this out. Let's see. Mission number 4. What did I mess up here? Press R for the title screen. What did I screw up? Oh, I spelled with wrong. W-I-D-T-H. Let me fix that. All right. So now if I refresh it, I should have that line. There we go. So now that line is back. And then what happens if I set my current game mode not to start, not to lose, but I set it to play? Well, if I set it to play, no overlay screen is on, and now I can zoom around. So that is working quite nicely. But see, I don't want to have to edit in the code what my game mode is. I want to be able to do it, on its own. So let's set it back to start, and let's see if we can look at what we might need to do next. So we're in the start mode, so this is pretty good. It's telling me to press enter to illuminate to start the game. I can't do that. That's not triggering. And if you look, I can sort of move my player right now, even though we're in the start mode. Like, this is not good. We shouldn't be able to play the game before we enter the play state. So we got to work on fixing those issues. So let's see what mission 6 has us doing. Mission 6 is putting us inside of our draw function. So remember, setup runs once when the game starts. So the setup just ran, setup just ran, setup just ran. And draw runs every single frame of the game. These are our built-in P5 functions that we can use from the library that we're importing. Mission 6 says we should only update player movement during play mode. We got to stop the game action while overlays are showing. Yeah, because right now, if you look, our update player function, and that's where we're moving our player, is running all of the time. And if we look, we're asking a question. We're saying, hey, here's a question. If And then our question is just true. Well, true is always going to be true. The answer to this question is always yes. So we are always calling our update player function, which is why, even though the game is in its start mode, I can zoom around the screen. I shouldn't be able to move my player if we're in the start mode. I also shouldn't be able to move my player if we are in the lose mode, if the game is over. I should only be able to move my player if we are in the play mode. So I got to ask a question that reflects that. I'm going to say, what is the current state of the game? Is it equal to our play mode? If that answer is yes, then we will update our player. So let's ask that question accordingly right here. We'll say, all right, our current game mode variable, we're going to check to see, is it equal to, 3 equal signs, our game mode object's play property? If the answer to that question is yes, then we'll update our player. If it's not yes, we won't run the code here that exists inside of these curly brackets. Now, why do I have it inside curly brackets? Well, when you only got to run one line, you can just put it right next to the if statement. But if you're going to run multiple lines, like lots of code in here, then you got to put it inside curly brackets. And we are absolutely going to build this block of code out later on. So I put the curly brackets there. All right, so let's check it. Now let's see. We should only be able to move the player if our game mode is equal to play. So now it's equal to start. I'm spamming the arrow keys and I'm getting 0 movement. So it looks like we fixed that bug. Nice job. Nicely done. So, but I can't transition out of this mode, right? Now I'm hitting enter and it's just not allowing me to play the game. So mission number 7 is all about triggering the transition from the start state to the play state. And it puts us inside of a function called key pressed. This is another built-in P5 function, right, from that P5 library. So if you look, it's right here with setup, withdraw, and with key pressed. And it's like a wrapper function that uses a JavaScript function called getKeyPressed. Essentially, anytime we press a key on a keyboard, this function will get run for us. And it's going to kind of look to see, hey, what key was pressed? So it's not going to check to see if a key is held down, only when it is triggered from being unpressed and going into the pressed state. So if you look here, so like if I press, I don't know, like the T key on my keyboard, this function would run. If I press enter, this function would run. The first thing that we're doing is we're asking a question. If the key code of the key that we just entered or just pressed is equal to enter, and enter is a special key, so it has a special name, just like our arrow keys. If the answer to that question is yes, what do we want to do? So we're going to do all the code that's here inside of these curly brackets. Well, if you look, the first thing we do is we ask another question. So this is known as nested if statements. We're nesting our questions. So if the answer to the first question was yes, we have another question that we will ask. And here we're asking, okay, if is the current game mode equal to the start? Is it equal to the start mode? Or is the current game mode equal to lose? Meaning, are you in the start state or the lose state? Is an overlay being shown? Is our start overlay being shown where we're saying press enter to illuminate? Or is our lose overlay being shown where it says press enter to play again or re-illuminate? Well, then what do we want to do? Well, now we want to transition from those states into the play state when the enter key is being pressed. So how are we going to transition into that state? Well, we'll do current game mode, our variable. We're going to assign it a new value. We're going to go to our game mode object, and we're going to target its play property. So now when I hit enter, I should be able to change the state of our game. So right now I'm in the start state. Okay, I can't move, nothing's happening. And so as soon as I hit enter, we'll change the value of that variable to the play state. And now our game is in the play state. So hey, that looks pretty good. Now I'm just going to show you something really quick. If I scroll down a little bit, I have a debug section here in this key pressed function for a forced lose screen. So this is for debugging purposes. If I press the G key and the current game mode state is equal to play, and that's where I'm at right now, we switch the current game mode value to the lose state. So because we don't have a way to actually lose our game, I can hit G and it's a game over. And so now we're here. Let's check to see if I can press enter again to re-illuminate and play again. Hey, I'm back into the play state. All right, so that's working really nicely here. So we're registering the enter press. So I press G to lose, And now if I want to restart the game, let's see if you see a problem here. If I want to restart the game, I hit enter. I'm back in the play state, but look at where my player is. He's all the way down here where he died. When I restart the game, I should go boom back to the starting location. So that's a problem. So let's go back to mission 7 where we pressed enter to transition into the play state. We got to do one more thing. Anytime we transition to the play state, we have to reset all of the values of our game. If you remember, we have a function called reset game to defaults right here. This right now is just repositioning our player, but it's going to do so much more as we add various layers to our game. We want to make sure that we call that function. So I will come back here to mission 7, and before we change our game mode to the play state, let's call reset game to defaults. Here it is. I'm going to hit tab to autocomplete and a set of parentheses to call that function. Let's test this out now. All right, so here's our game. So now I'm going to be all the way up here in the top left corner. I hit G for our game over debug. When I hit enter, I'm right back to where we should be for the start of our game. Awesome, awesome. Now there's just one problem, right? If I look here, it says press R for the title screen. If I press R right now, nothing is happening. So I have no way to reset my game. And that is what our final mission is going to have us work on. Mission 8 is transitioning back to the title screen. We want to return to the title screen with the R key to reset the game and switch back to start mode. So if we look, we're asking a question. And the question says if false. Bad news, guys. False is always false. The answer to this question is always going to be no. So our code inside of these brackets is never going to run. We will never reset the game to defaults, great, and then set the current game mode to our start mode. We're never going to go back to our start screen with this question. So we got to ask the right question. We want to ask, is the user pressing the R key? And we're just going to model the code that is here for our debug keys. So this was the G key. Let's do this for the R key now. So I'll say if key is equal to lowercase r or key is equal to capital R in case the caps lock was on. We now have a way to restart our game, reset the system. Let's check it out. I think we're done with this lesson. Let's test everything together. So here's my title screen. So this is great. I can't move because we're not in the play state yet. I press enter to illuminate. Very good. I can move around the screen. If I hit G to force a game over, I get my lose overlay screen. I can hit enter to re-illuminate and replay, which transitions me right back to the center of the screen. As I'm playing, if I want to restart my game, I can just hit R. And it restarts, brings me right back to the title screen. And that transition also works at a game over screen. So if I'm at a game over screen, instead of just playing, I can go right back to the title screen and leave it here until someone else is ready to play our game. Hey, this is a great, great place to stop. Our overlay system and our game state systems are working perfectly in sync with each other to control our gameplay modes as we move through the game. We've got a start mode, a play mode, and a lose mode. But the beautiful thing is we built that system and we built it really well. So it's easy to scale it up. Maybe we want to add a pause overlay. So when the user presses the P key, we could change the game mode to the current game mode to a pause state and show pause screen. And when they press P again, it unpauses. You could have a menu state where a user opens up a menu, or an inventory state where a user opens up an inventory and we swap out the overlay screen that we're drawing over our game window. The possibilities here are endless. So with that, we'll end here, and I can't wait to see you in our next video.